Have you ever heard of spinal energetics? Well, neither had we. Once we did hear about it, we had to not only interview Brittany about what it is, but Trish went and had a session herself. We explore spinal energetics in this week's podcast. This is something that I would definitely classify as some weird shit, but it's actually really cool. Help us welcome Brittany, Spinal Energetics Practitioner, to the Wellness Empowerment Project.
Welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. I'm Trish.
And I'm Julie. We are two nurses exploring holistic healing and wellness practices to empower you to be the leader of your own health. Join us as we try out new things, or as we call it, weird shit, and have some fun along the way.
Hi, and welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. Today, we're talking with Brittany, who is the very first spinal energetic practitioner in New Jersey. She's also one of the first nationally board-certified health and wellness coaches in the country. With a bachelor's in athletic training and a master's in health promotion, she has been able to initiate health programs in various large-scale hospitals, municipalities, and wellness brokers across the nation, with a focus on cardiometabolic and physical therapy. Over her career, she's been sought out as an expert in the field, including speaking opportunities for the Medical Affairs Professional Global Conference and the American College of Preventative Medicine. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We want to start with, what is spinal energetics?
What a loaded question, and a great one at that. It is a mix of Western and Eastern methodologies where we're looking at where in the spine is there bound tension and what can we do to unwind that bound tension. There's a few different things that go into it, from tapping into the chakras, tapping into the different energetic layers within the body or coming off from the body, like mental versus emotional versus soul or spiritual or physical. And also looking at physically, right? Where in the spine is the bound tension being held? What can we do to help loosen that? Because there are physical and metaphysical reasons of why we hold tension. It's probably better seen than spoken or experienced, but I would say in a nutshell, I would describe it as that.
When you're talking about bound tension in the spine, can you elaborate a little bit more on what encompasses the bound tension? Is it emotions? Is it a physical process? Can you get into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I would say it's not always one or the other. I think it can be definitely a mixture. For example, those that might have a little bit of hay fever and or an inability to express themselves freely might have this bound tension in the mid-cervical spine. And that's one of the processes in spinal energetics. So I see it where for some, it could be purely physical, some metaphysical reasons that there's tension there, and sometimes both. What's really interesting too is very rarely have I had a client where there's just one area that there's bound tension. Like, we are complex human beings. We have a lot going on in our lives. And so it's very common that people have multiple areas of tension going on. Some might be a little bit stronger than others. Some might be rooted far deeper in their life. For example, like a type A personality, someone who's always in their thoughts, always in their head. They've been that way their whole life. They're probably going to have a bit of tension in the upper C spine on the left or right side. That could take a while to work out. And that's okay. We honor that. Whereas others, maybe they're just going through a breakup, right? They might have something around the heart chakra area, right in between the shoulder blades. They might have some tension right there that over time might be able to more easily be worked out.
How do you figure out where that tension is? Do you have an assessment process that you go through?
Yeah, so I do it a little bit differently, whether it's a virtual session or an in-person session. In person, as soon as the person lays on the table, and typically they'll be face down, I'm already looking at, are their legs tight together, meaning they're in a little bit of fight or flight? Are their legs pretty standard on the table? Are they very wide, meaning they're open, they want to release? So already in looking at where their breathing is, where is the breath being trapped? I already have my little indicators going off on what a person might be feeling. Even to the point before they even get on the table, And I always take the first few moments in a session to talk. What's going on? What are you feeling? So before they even lie down, I can already nail down at least one or two processes that they might be feeling. Then for those in person, I'll look at their leg length. Is one leg shorter than the other when they're lying down? What's their Achilles tendon tightness? Is one Achilles tendon tighter or looser than the other? And how does it relate to which leg might be shorter? And then I'll palpate from the base of the skull down each vertebrae, down into the tailbone to clarify or more so confirm everything that we would have assumed at that point. It was interesting when we were working with Trish yesterday, there was one that came up and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Asked a couple clarifying questions and Trish was saying, yep, that sounds about right. Whereas now shifting over to virtual, I have that background of whatever the person feels comfortable sharing with me. What's going on physically? What's going on metaphysically? What's going on with your relationships, relationship with self? And then I'm also Reiki level 2 attuned, meaning I can deliver distance Reiki. I've learned quite a few tools there where I can do a scan, pretending as if the person's body is in front of me. I like to use a long pillow and make it, in my mind, be the person's body. I'll hover over and I'll feel. Where is there more resonance coming from? Where is the tingling, the more warmth, the more cool, those chakra areas that are calling for a little bit of love? I'll do that with my virtual spinal energetic sessions as well. There's a lot more intuition that I need to tap into for virtual, but it is just as, if not more, effective.
Brittany, as you mentioned, I actually did go for an in-person session yesterday because I was very curious of what this experience could be like. I also signed up for a virtual session because I'm very curious to the difference between the two. You mentioned that sometimes the virtual could be even more impactful than the physical session. I'd like to know why you feel like the virtual can be more impactful.
Yeah, that's one of the most commonly asked questions. In general, people will say, how is virtual effective? Everything is energy. Being online, think of how much more energy there is now added to the mix. All these frequencies. We're tapping into that. We're pulling upon that energy too on top into the session. So now it's supercharged. When I first started receiving spinal energetics myself, and actually still to this day, all of my personal sessions are virtual. My own personal practitioner is over in Australia, and I feel all the same things and move, etc., just as if I was in person. It does require a little bit of faith, trust, rapport, but it is brilliant.
In terms of everything is energy, is there a reason why things may focus or collect in the spine, particularly, rather than in somewhere else in the person's body?
Think of your life force energy. Everything is supercharged right in the midline. It's where all of the chakras come together. There's also tons and tons of fascia there. I'll admit I'm not an expert yet, maybe, with the fascia work. That's something that I'm really interested in learning more about and have been reading more and more about as well. But it is just such a supercharged area within the body. Everything connects to it. Everything flows through it.
After you find those collections, what do you do to move them out? Or are there times when you feel like this is something that should be here?
So when I find an area that, okay, there's tension here. For example, I just had somebody a couple weeks ago, they had some bound tension in the sacral area. And it was actually interesting because it was them, their boyfriend, and their daughter that came in for sessions together. And when you're thinking about familial things and what happens when people are together a lot of the time, what they'll pick up from each other, every single one of them had bound tension on the right or left, the left side of the lower sacrum. Every single one of them. So I'm like, okay, y'all are definitely picking up on each other a lot. What I did there is I feel for resonance in the actual physical area. Okay, when I'm tapping into that area, am I starting to see any vibration happening in that area? Is the breath getting stuck maybe there, or is it increasing right there? And sometimes I won't see anything right there on the physical, so I'll tap into what's called a minor spine. There's two minor spines. There's your cervical area, like the upper spine and the lower right on the sacrum itself. So right above your tailbone. Those are supercharged areas within your spine. So we call them the minor spines. There's an area that correlates in your upper spine to where your sacrum would be down below. So then I tap into there and see, okay, is there more movement now happening in where that physical area is? If not, now I tap into that minor spine of the sacrum. But it's a little complicated. That's where I appreciate my sports medicine background and anatomy and physiology. But that's just the first part of tapping into that energetic area. Then we look at once we activate, and we can talk more about what activation looks like in a moment. Then I'm looking at what layer is this coming from? Is this somebody's physical layer, like right on their body? Or is it right above that where it's your emotions? Or maybe above that, your mental layer? Or your spiritual or your soul layer? And everybody's layers are different spans. Some, they might be very compact. Others, they might be very expanse. After we activate in that layer, then we tap into the chakra that's associated with that layer as well. There's a lot of layers go into spinal. It's one of the things that I really appreciate, that it's all encompassing and tying in so many different things to help give 100% to where it needs love.
You mentioned that we use the physical spine, but it sounds like when you're saying the minor spine, like the energetic that correlate with the physical body. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes. Because in that minor spine, from medial to lateral, it is a mirror image of your spine. So if I'm tapping into that minor spine and I'm closer to the midline, I'm activating the cervical area of the spine, versus if I'm going into the coccyx, the tailbone, it's farther out of that minor spine. So like closer right outside, like below your ear. And that's just amazing how the body mirrors itself vertically to horizontally.
So can you share with us, once you've done this assessment, physical and energetic assessment is what it sounds like, what are you then been doing to help release that tension, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, or even at the soul level?
Yes. We talked briefly about activation. And you probably didn't know this, Trish, because you were face down, but you could probably hear it. We use a lot of breath work in spinal energetics. And part of the purpose there is where you are focusing your breath, that's where you're focusing your intention. That's where energy is then going to flow. A lot of shamanic practices, they use a lot of breath work. And so spinal energetics involves a lot of breath work too. You see all the videos online, people moving, et cetera, and they usually have this beautiful music in the background. So you're not actually hearing that the practitioner is making a lot of these sounds. At first, it can be a little startling, like what's going on. And so I do give people a heads up before the session starts. Like, FYI, you may not know this, but you'll hear some crazy sounds come from me. But with those sounds, a lot of it, like part of it is fueling. I'm trying to fuel that area with energy, get it moving, get it out of that stagnant self, so to speak, and getting a little bit of movement in there. And not all people move. That doesn't mean it's not working. And then getting it to flow. And that's where my breath will start to slow a little bit, just getting it to move. And as we work on different processes too, I try to connect them, right? So we were just working on the heart area. Now we're working on the sacral. Okay, let's take that energy that we just activated over here, start throwing it towards that area, get it all to connect. And a lot of it just really is intention. Like, there's so much power in our intention. You see all the things about manifesting, prayer. It's energy. It's moving energy.
What I recall, the little that I recall from my session, and I will be honest, I was pretty much out. I don't even remember, but I was very relaxed. I remember hearing the breath sound, but I also remember that I had a pretty, to me, what felt like a very large twitch. My right wrist, my left wrist, and my right hip. I remember feeling a pretty large twitch happen. I'm curious, when I felt that happening, is that sign of the energy moving through that particular area?
It is. And it's really interesting. Maybe it's not that interesting. It makes sense. We were working on the right side of your sacrum when that twitch happened in your hips on the right side. So it makes sense, right? And as your arms were moving too, some of the breath was getting caught in the thoracic area, but we were trying to get it to go towards the throat and the crown. It's like your body was resisting a little bit at first. It's just so fascinating because, like you said, you were knocked out, but your body was still listening.
100%. It was a very interesting experience, and I'm excited to see what it is next time. But you mentioned you have a sports medicine background and pretty significant background in health coaching. What brought you to spinal energetics?
I know it seems, yeah, it's a lot in the sense of how this all unraveled. Here I am, started off with a sports medicine background. Still love it. Still love the anatomy, the physiology, the physical therapy, all of those components of it. There was just a lot of emergency care with it that I felt like with my nervous system, it wasn't jiving. My nervous system still had a lot of work to do before I could handle the fight and flight of somebody else's at that time. So literally having people's lives in my hands, that happened twice in my undergraduate career. I remember thinking like, okay, I can handle it. I can do it, but I don't want to go into work every day thinking that this might happen. I made a shift into health promotion and health behavior psychology, which was more aligned with my strengths at the time and still is. Did health coaching with the master's as well. And then got out of college, couldn't actually find a job in health coaching for quite some time because it was still so new. This was 2014. The coaching board certified exam wasn't out until 2017. It's like, I guess maybe my knack is trying to get in the forefront of all these interesting things that are going to come out, right? So coaching and then spinal energetics. But what was really interesting for me is, and I don't want to get political or anything like that on here, and I say this with a lot of grace. I grew up as a Christian, and I still am. Really interesting as we look at things such as like the Holy Spirit. I remember going on these retreats and being involved in the youth ministry. We'd go on these retreats to Pennsylvania, and people would have these amazing experiences during worship. Bands up there, you're singing, etc. You feel things are charged. People are looking to their higher power, whether it be God, the universe, etc. And there's something to that, to intuition, that tapping into that surrender. Fast forward, me and my husband moved. We moved to a new area. I wanted to do more yoga. This yoga studio in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, Alchemy House of Yoga, was looking for what's called a karma yogi. You go, you help out at the desk, you sign people in, and you can take free yoga classes. That sounds really good. We started that a couple of years ago, and I still do it just because I love the community there. As I was getting more involved, I got to get more involved in their workshops as well. I remember thinking to myself, gosh, I'm still so anxious. I still feel like I'm picking up on what I can only describe at the time as like picking up on other people's energies. Like I couldn't regulate my own. I would make other people's problems my problems. If somebody was angry, I would pick up on that and get like scared, even though they weren't angry at me, but just being in the same room. I'm like, what is that? I got Reiki level 1 attuned just for the sole purpose of helping myself. And everything started to click, that everything is energy. Some may call it the Holy Spirit. Some may call it this. Some may call it that, but we can't deny. We're not denying its existence. We're just calling it different things. Then Reiki level 2 attune. See an Instagram reel of spinal energetics and people moving on tables and things like that. I'm like, what is this? It looks neat. And in me, it just made sense. Things started really clicking. That's a little bit of my origin story. Whenever we bring up religion with that stuff, I hope no one takes offense to it. I don't mean it in any offensive way. That's just my personal journey.
It's an interesting journey. In your practice now, how do you work with clients? And is it solely just to offer spinal energetic sessions, or do you use that as a modality for other things?
I offer Reiki and spinal energetics in person and virtually to folks. My health coaching, I very rarely offer, but I integrate into those practices because with health coaching, you really learn how to talk to people. You learn what kinds of questions need to be asked, these open-ended questions to help empower the person and affirm all the hard work that they're doing. But yeah, that's how I think things would overlap in my realm.
You talked a little bit about the certain issues or certain things you find in specific areas of the spine. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you would find in the different areas of the spine?
So let's think about, I want to use another example here. the tailbone. Sometimes it shifts a little to the right or a little bit to the left. And I just had a client that I was working with. It was shifted to the right. When they were laying on the table as well, their legs were like, there was no space in between them. Think of a animal with their tail between their legs. They're scared. Us humans, we do the same thing with our tailbone. In that session, I made a point, being trauma informed, making sure that they knew that they are safe, they are in control. That was very important for this person. As we wrapped up, I said, if you feel comfortable doing so, do you mind sharing a little bit more of maybe what's going on in your life? And they actually said, I suffer from PTSD. Okay. Your body told me that. Like, you didn't even have to say it out loud. I knew there was trauma in your body, or that you had a history of trauma just based upon that showing up in your body. And I think it's important to know too, it's bi-directional. Body may not show me something if it's not ready to be shown. I think it's really neat how our energies can work together. One spinal energetics practitioner may assess somebody and find a different finding than if I do it. But that's because how is their energy going to work with theirs versus mine with theirs? We're both right. You can find something different, but we're both right because you're adding different ingredients to the treatment.
That actually reminds me of something I heard. It was, I think, maybe a psychologist or something like that, saying that no two children are raised in the same household. And he makes that point because the way the mother interacts with, let's say, the son can be different than how they interact with the daughter. Not because, and I'm just saying that to differentiate between the two, not because of the gender per se, but because the different personality and the different things from people's past, it comes up differently, and how they interact and how they're being challenged in that moment. Right. What it sounds like, there is no right or wrong, right? Just like the way someone's relationship with one child or one parent is different from the other. There's no right or wrong. It's just what's coming out at a particular time point. And the same thing is happening if you go to different spinal energetic practitioners.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful analogy. I'm going to steal that.
Steal away. If I remembered who I heard say that, I would totally pass that on as well. But yeah, I think that's what came to my mind when you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it shows the value of it okay to explore different practitioners.
Yeah.
And different modalities.
Yes, I completely agree. 100%. It's like dating. You may not find the right match on the first date. Continue, date around.
All right, we're going to pause right here and continue this conversation in next week's episode, where we dive more into what it is like to experience some time with Brittany, and also just more conversation about energy work in general. Have a great week. I'll leave all of Brittany's information in our show notes if you want to connect with her, and hope you're back next week so you can hear the rest of our conversation.
Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share with a friend. Want to learn more about a specific topic? Drop us a line on our website and we can explore it deeper with you.